taken off the
how many
back.
civilians do you believe you've killed?
We don't have exact figures, as you know, it's the fog of war.
But you've got exact numbers for Hamas terrorists you've killed. Why wouldn't you know how many civilians you've killed?
Because obviously our focus is to go after the Hamas terrorists. And
hang on, I mean, that does imply that you're putting a bigger premium on killing Hamas terrorists in terms of numbers and accountability than you are on innocent civilians. That can't be right, surely. If you know exactly how many Hamas terrorists you've killed, you must know how many civilians you've killed. Otherwise, you're prioritising the lives of terrorists over innocent people.
Piers, with respect, don't put words into my mouth, please. I didn't say exactly 14,000. I said around 14,000. Whereas Hamas will come out with precise numbers that statisticians will look at.
Give me a ballpark number for civilians.
Well, you can use the ballpark as far as the Hamas figures, which I reject as being false.
Well, if they're false, why would you give me those?
I gave you the numbers that I had.
No, you've told me you know how many Hamas terrorists you've killed, but you don't seem to have any idea how many civilians you've killed. I'm just bemused. Why wouldn't you keep count of both?
I don't have that information to give you, Piers. If I did, I would.
You've literally no idea how many civilians you've been killing.
I can tell you definitively that our aim is to go after Hamas.
No, hang on. I'm sorry to push you on this. That's quite extraordinary. You're an official spokesman for the Israeli government, and you have no idea how many civilians you've killed. I thought you just told me that you were particularly careful about not killing civilians. But if you don't know how many you've killed, how can you say that with any certainty?
Because even if you were to go by a ratio of the Hamas figures, we would still be far ahead of any Western army.
It wasn't my question. You know it wasn't my question.
I don't have the information.
You literally have no idea how many civilians you've killed.
It's not that I don't know. I'm not authorized to give the information. I don't have the information.
That's complete nonsense. Why are you authorized to give me the number of terrorists you've killed, but not the number of civilians? I don't understand. Can you explain?
Piers, we will go after Hamas. We will ensure that we...
But you want me to believe you're being incredibly careful about how many civilians you're killing, and you have an amazing exemplary record, but you don't know how many civilians you're killing. So how do I know you've been careful?
Piers, when the dust settles, we will come out with the proper numbers. Hamas runs to the press daily with false...
When the dust settles, a lot of people will have died, and you know how many Hamas you've killed, but you don't know how many civilians you've killed. And I'm just asking you why. Why is it you've kept a record of one, but not the other?
I personally don't have that information to give to you. You can ask me over and over. I'm not going to come up with more information. I don't personally
you don't know?
I don't have that information for you.
But you're an official government spokesman for the Israeli government, and you have no idea? Piers,
I came on here to focus on what's going on with the war.
Well, actually, you came on here to answer my questions, I think.
Yeah, and I don't have an answer for you for that.
And I didn't intend to press you on this point because I assumed that you would not respond the way you have. But I've never had an Israeli spokesman who simply said, I have no idea. Well, I'm now joined by Israeli spokesman Eylon Levy. Eylon Levy, thank you very much indeed for joining me. How many Palestinians, including Hamas terrorists, have you so far killed?
We know that we've killed thousands of terrorists. We know.
Well, hang on. Let me ask you about that. So, the Hamas-run health authority says it's over 14,000 people have now been killed. Of that, I mean, do you accept those numbers? Because they have been endorsed by other bodies, but do you accept that those numbers are fairly accurate? Historically, they have been.
Hamas is the organization, the army of terror that on October 7th burned, beheaded, abducted people, and then lied about it to the entire international media.
I understand that.
So it is the opposite of a credible source. And
I understand that, but do you accept, given that previous figures that they have given during the many years of this conflict about casualties have turned out to be pretty accurate, do you accept this is likely to be the range of people who've been killed?
First of all, they haven't been proven accurate because historically Hamas never admits in the course of the war that its own terrorists are killed, and that only comes to light afterwards. I'll say what we know about the numbers, and we don't have exact numbers because, Piers, I can't tell you how many Israelis were murdered in the October 7th massacre because we still have dozens of body parts, dozens of body bags of unidentifiable human remains. So the idea that I can give you an exact number is not realistic, but here's what I can tell you. One, we know we've killed thousands of terrorists because our campaign has been target the monsters who perpetrated the October 7th
How do you know they're terrorists?
Two, we know... How do we know they're terrorists?
How do you tell a Hamas terrorist from a Palestinian civilian who's not part of Hamas?
Hamas is making it very difficult to do that because we know that it's
So how do you know you've killed thousands of them?
Because we know who we are targeting. We are targeting on the basis of precise intelligence. This isn't an indiscriminate bombardment as many would like to paint it. Hamas knows that we do not target civilians. It seems to know that better than some in the West. That's why, for example, we recently declassified an intercepted phone call of Islamic Jihad terrorists talking about transporting an anti-tank missile in a baby's pram because they know perfectly well that Israel is trying to target the terrorists and not the civilians.
Okay, but here's my problem with this, is that by your own admission, you don't know how many Hamas terrorists, and I categorize people who belong to the Hamas organization as terrorists, just for clarity. But you don't actually know, do you, how many of them you've killed? And by your own admission, just a few moments ago, you said that they make it incredibly difficult for you to work out who is a Hamas terrorist and who is a civilian. And that seems to me part of the problem that you have with the optics of this to the wider world, is that they're seeing horrible imagery all day long. I mean, it's just the worst thing I've ever seen all over social media.
The worst thing we've ever seen were the atrocities that Hamas
No, I'm not. I'm just saying.
7th.
I've not seen. Thankfully, I've not seen what many journalists have seen, which is the 45-minute film of that. And I understand it's absolutely horrific. And I'm not making I'm not making any comparison. No, I would not say anything is worse than that. So, for the record, but the horrible imagery all day long, it is suggesting to people that there are thousands and thousands of women and a lot of children, maybe as many as 5,000 to 6,000 children now, have been killed by these airstrikes and now the ground attack. And I think the problem that you have, and I say this respectfully, the problem you have is that you don't actually know how many Hamas terrorists you're killing. I mean, if you're honest, you don't, do you?
Piers, the sad fact is, everyone who has been killed in the Gaza Strip in the last month and a half would still be alive if Hamas had not launched this war with the October 7th massacre and then fought out of densely populated civilian areas that it has done its darndest to prevent people from evacuating in order to get to safety while we try to get them to safety. But I want to say something about the civilian casualties because I think this is important. We know that we've killed thousands of terrorists. We know that Hamas is inflating the numbers.
You don't actually know that.
We believe...
But that's my problem with this. You say you have, but when I push you for the details, you don't have them. And that Piers, for me,
that's the problem. You exactly how many Israelis were murdered in the October 7th
I understand
massacre,
that.
Because we're still
and that's horrific.
Bodies.
No, but I agree with you. That is utterly horrific that you still can't determine how many people were killed that day because of the horrors that were perpetrated. You and I are in complete agreement. But nor do you know how many of these Hamas terrorists you're killing. It could be that vast numbers of them, and we think there are around 35,000 perhaps in total, that vast numbers of them either disappeared into the tunnels and have been safely there ever since, or simply went south with the million or more Palestinian supposed civilians that went down there. Maybe a lot of them infiltrated that group and are down in the south. You don't actually know, do you, for sure? I'm joined by Israeli Ambassador to the UK, Zippy Hotovely. Ambassador, welcome back to Uncensored. Yes. The percentage of children that you're killing compared to the percentage of you're killing of Hamas terrorists, what is it? Do you know? Do you know how many children you've killed? Well, hang on. Answer me that one question. Do you know how many Hamas terrorists you've killed and how many children you've killed? Do you know those two numbers?
I know the numbers that came from the IDF. I know the numbers that came from a very, very established
Give me the two numbers.
Wait a second. We killed 30,000. We killed 30,000 terrorists in phase 1 of the war. Since the war is back, I don't have the numbers. But let me tell you one thing.
How many children have you killed?
We never target civilians. So this question is irrelevant.
How many children have you killed?
Piers, Israel is not killing children. Israel is not killing children. Hamas is using them as
Israel
human
is killing
shields.
children every single day.
Piers, this is a blood label you're putting on Israel.
Why
You know it's not true.
What? No, it's not actually. And what you're trying to do is be very weaselly with your words.
No, I'm not.
The truth is, you are killing a lot of children. You would argue you're doing.
Why it's caused?
Hang on, let me finish.
Hamas is using them as human shields, and you know that.
Let me finish my question to you. You are killing a lot of children on a daily basis. That is indisputable. My interesting question for you is, how come you know exactly how many Hamas terrorists you've killed, but you have no idea how many children you've killed?
Piers, I will give you the answer, because when you are accusing a country of killing children, it sounds to all the people that are listening to us as if Israel wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh, let's kill kill innocent people now." This is not what Israel is doing.
But you are killing a lot of children. And my question is, how come you know how many terrorists you've killed?
Are you familiar with the international law? Are you familiar with that at all? Because the international humanitarian law says very clearly, as long as you're targeting civilian targets, you're allowed to attack hospitals that you know they're terrorists. No, but you're not answering my question. Israel is not deliberately killing children. And this accusation is a fake thing that you keep on saying again and again when you know we're a democratic country, cares about human life.
I just asked you a simple question.
At the same time, Hamas is deliberately using the children as human shields. And you know that.
I don't deny anything you say about Hamas. They're everything you say they are, probably worse. I despise Hamas. They are a despicable terrorist organization.
So help us win this war if you're so despising Hamas. You're offering to surrender. You're not offering to win.
No, I'm asking you, I'm asking you this question for a purpose. I'm curious why you say you know exactly how many Hamas terrorists have been killed, but you have no idea how many children have been killed. Why is it you know one number, but not the other?
I'll give you the answer. Because in the end of the day, we never target civilians. We only target the terrorists.
Why don't you know the statistics?
And look, you can ask this question.
Are you saying no children have been killed in Gaza?
I didn't say that.
Are you saying that?
I didn't say that.
What are you saying? Well, what are you saying?
Piers, what I'm saying is Hamas
How
needs
many
to
have
be
been
blamed.
Killed?
Hamas needs to be blamed for any child that is being killed in Gaza. Now, if you want to go into this propaganda of Israel is doing this and that,
you know... I'm asking you why you know how many terrorists you've killed, but you don't know how many children you've killed in the process.
I have an answer because we targeted those terrorists and we never targeted any civilians. That's the answer, and this is why
you know that
we
know many thousands of civilians, but you know many thousands of civilians have been killed. You understand
Piers,
that?
Do you understand that you don't care about my children and other Israeli children by letting 7th of October happen again and again?
Oh, I do. In fact, to my detriment, actually, in the Middle East for many, many months, when I was defending Israel's right to defend itself. But now we're at a point where more and more civilians are getting killed in collateral damage as you wage a war and a strategy and a plan which makes no sense to even your own former prime ministers who think you're committing war crimes. So don't just couch all this as propaganda by people who just... Well, OK, but again, I simply ask you one more time. Why is it you know how many Hamas terrorists you've killed, but you don't know how many children you've killed? Why is that?
As I said again, because in the end of the day, when you're accusing someone in killing...
You don't count one, but you count the other?
You accuse someone in doing something deliberately while Israel is not doing it deliberately. Can I accuse the UK of killing German children during the war? You would have said it's absurd.
Stop playing whataboutery.
It's absurd.
Explain why you know one number, but you don't know the other. Well, my next two guests have been hugely influential advocates for either side. Dave Smith is a libertarian commentator, a comedian, and the host of the Part of the Problem podcast. Natasha Hausdorff is a barrister, international lawyer, and a passionate supporter of Israel. When I interviewed the UK ambassador to the UK, she was able to tell me definitively that 30,000 Hamas terrorists had been killed.
I think it was an estimate, let's be clear.
But she had absolutely no idea, estimate or otherwise, how many children had been killed in the process. Do you know?
There's a very simple logical explanation for that, which is Israel is targeting Hamas and Palestinian.
Do you know how many children Israel's killed in the process?
There is a very simple explanation for the reason that we do not know. Because
you only count the terrorists who killed, not the children?
Hear the explanation?
Well, I just ask you, just to be clear, are you saying that the IDF only counts the bodies of terrorists it kills, not innocent children?
Well, the IDF has not been, and this is a shift now, as you will have heard from Jonathan Conricus, has not been in control of any significant part of Gaza to be able to conduct that analysis.
So how does it know how many terrorists it's killing?
Because it is striking them with clear intelligence and targeting those strikes deliberately.
So it counts the bodies of the terrorists, but not the children it kills in the process.
It counts. I'm sorry, this is perfectly logical.
It's actually not logical at all.
It counts.
To anyone watching this, they're thinking, what on earth are these Israelis saying? First the ambassador, now you. What you're saying is that you only count the terrorists that are killed. You don't count the children that are killed in the process of killing the terrorists.
Perhaps
to which it begs the question,
no, I can provide you with some additional analysis.
Why?
If you'll allow me to answer the question, I'll provide you with some additional analysis, which is in relation to the casualty ratios that have been projected.
How do you know the ratios?
I'll explain. The casualty ratio throughout the first period of the war, phase 1, was generally put at between 1 to 1 and 1.5 to 1. I'll explain. Since then, in phase 2, because of a very different type of fighting that we're now seeing, there are some estimates that it may have gone up to 2 to 1.
How do you know?
Very simply, that Israel has been able to establish...
How do you know if you're not counting?
May I answer the question?
Well, you're not counting the civilians you're killing, so how do you know the ratio?
Well, if you're not going to allow me to
answer the question... You talk about logic. Let me go to... I want to bring Dave... I don't know.
You've just asked me the question.
I've let you speak for a long time. Dave is...
You haven't, Piers.
Well, I have, and I'll let you speak again. We've got plenty of time here.
I'm sorry, but...
I'm sorry, but it's my show. I'm going to go to Dave. Dave, I'm told I'm lacking logic here. Is there anything logical about what we're hearing about how they apparently know the exact ratio of terrorists they're killing to civilians, but they don't know how many civilians they're killing? How do you know the ratio?
Pierre, I think one of the things that any honest observer has noticed since the very beginning of this conflict is that the Israelis, including the highest levels of the Israeli government, they just speak out of both sides of their mouth the whole time. And so it's like, which argument are we even taking on? I mean, they'll sit here and say from the very beginning that the goal is just to get the hostages back and to defeat Hamas, while their finance minister is openly talking about how the goal is to cleanse the entire strip.
He's not even hiding it. He says it.
Yes.
He literally says it in front of the world.
Yes. And we see them now putting this into plans into action to do this. So how are we to judge this? They'll sit here and say that they've taken painstaking efforts to make sure that they limit the number of civilians that are killed, while also saying they have no idea how many civilians are being killed, and they don't count the number because that's not who they're targeting. You'll sit here and say we're only targeting Hamas, or that we're only intentionally targeting Hamas, and at the same time think about the argument they're even making as Smotrich is out bragging about how not one grain of wheat will get into Gaza for this 3-month period that you're referring to. But they'll say, hey, look, they have stockpiles of aid that had gone in there previously. It's like, okay, Piers, so then logically, can't we deduce you're not starving Hamas? They've got plenty of food. Then who is the additional blockade supposed to impact? It's the civilian population. And so, listen, I'm sorry, this is just anybody with just common sense and a basic understanding of logic could tell you that none of these defenses make any sense. And instead, I think it's reasonable for us to say that we're going to judge the Israeli government, and I like that you were precise about that. We're talking about the government of a foreign country, not people who believe in Judaism across the world, and not even necessarily the people of that country. But when I'm judging the Israeli government, I'm sorry, I'm going to judge them based off what their actions are, and I'm going to judge them based off what their motives are when they admit the truth.
Yeah.
And so you could sit here and say, oh, we're doing everything we can to prevent the number of children dying, and then brag about the ratio, but at the same time tell me you don't even know the number of children who are dying. The bottom line here, and this is why global opinion is turning against Israel, is the level of human suffering that is being inflicted by Israel on the people of Gaza is evil. It is pure freaking evil, and it doesn't need to be done this way. And if you think you can get away with this with a decentralized media and with smartphones and with 4K high def images and with the ability through social media today for people to communicate in a non-controlled environment, good freaking luck, man. This is going to end up so bad for everyone. It's already ended up so bad for the poor people of Gaza. But I just can't. I'm truly stunned, Piers, and I'm sure you are too. I am stunned by the lack of rational self-preservation on the part of the Israelis. Like, read the room here. You are turning the entire world against you, and I do not understand why they would choose to do this.
Yeah.